Small Grants Program for 2024. So my name is Jade Hurst and I'm the lead of Strategic Research Management in one of the TAC's research teams. Joining me today is Hannah Simpkin, who will take us through the information session. So let's begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we're meeting today, the Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be listening today. Now, our agenda for today will include a focus on the Small Grants Program, and then we will go through what we're looking for, how to apply, and how you might get help to support you to be successful. Now, very briefly, and for context, a little information about the TAC. The TAC is a government organisation and also a compulsory third-party insurer. The TAC's key functions are to prevent accidents and support those people who have been injured on our roads. And the TAC achieves this through road safety education and through funding medical, rehabilitation and disability services for injured people, and also through providing compensation for those who are eligible. Now, consistent with our social responsibility, the TAC also invests in health, disability and compensation research to help people get their lives back on track. And it's through this function that we offer this grant program. Our Small Grants Program is all about supporting people with a disability. We know that there are around 7,000 TAC clients who have had a life-changing disability. This might be in the form of a brain injury, spinal cord injury, burns, blindness, or even a limb amputation. And in addition to medical and rehabilitation services, the TAC funds disability services to support their lifetime care and support. Now, the Small Grants Program aims to enhance disability services, programs and information products so they're client-centred, outcome-focused and support full inclusion in society. So we are looking for innovative, community-based projects that are user-led and embrace principles of disability practice. I'll now hand over to Hannah Simpkin.
To be eligible for a small grant with us, you must be a Victorian-based organisation with an Australian business number or an ABN, or an Australian company number, an ACN, and you must be operating in a community setting. Organisations applying must be at least one of the following: a not-for-profit organisation, so that's an organisation that provides services to the community and does not operate to make a profit for its members. Disability and/or self-advocacy group, an organisation providing assistance and support to ensure that the rights of people with disability are upheld as valued members of the community. A social enterprise, that's a business driven by a social cause to improve communities and give people access to employment and training. At least 50% of profits must be used towards the social mission of the company. Disability service providers, an organisation delivering disability services as defined in the Disability Service Safeguards Act 2018. A local government authority or public school, or you could be a health service provider or a peak body. Now, there's a little asterisk next to those two, because if you're a health service provider or a peak body, you must be working in collaboration with one of the other organisation types in order to be eligible for a grant. You are ineligible to apply for this grant if you are an individual, as this grant program targets organisations, an academic researcher, as this program targets user-led non-academic projects from community-based organisations, a vocational rehabilitation provider, as the TAC has existing projects contributing to these needs, a TAC client who operates a disability-related business to avoid any perception of bias or conflict of interest, a recipient, especially anyone with the same key person of the small grant funding for 2023, to ensure that your organisation has the capability to deliver the project and to maximise the benefit across the disability sector, and organisations who are primarily for-profit and/or state government departments, as this program targets the broader community consistent with the TAC's social procurement strategy. Now, your application will also be deemed ineligible if it's incomplete, if it duplicates previous projects or a project in progress, a person is nominated as the key contact on more than one application, or it is not submitted by the closing date and time via Smarty Grants. The application form includes a number of screening questions to test your organisation's eligibility before you can progress to the next application stage. Now, if you're unsure about your eligibility, please contact us for help. The maximum funding available for these grants is $50,000 excluding GST. We're looking for innovative projects that align with helping TAC clients with disability to get their life back on track. Your project should aim to increase access, inclusion, choice and control, and/or build capability for Victorians with disability and be informed and led by users. Now, users can be TAC clients or other Victorians with disability. Projects must also address at least one of the outcome areas in Australia's Disability Strategy 2021 to 2031. The Small Grants Program aligns with the 7 outcome areas set out in Australia's Disability Strategy to achieve a vision of an inclusive Australian society that can ensure people with disability can fulfil their potential as equal members of the community. Your project must address at least one of the following to be eligible for funding. So employment and financial security. So people with disability have economic security, enabling them to plan for the future and exercise choice and control over their lives. Inclusive homes and communities, meaning people with disability live in inclusive, accessible and well-designed homes and communities. Safety, rights and justice. The rights of people with disability are promoted, upheld and protected, and people with disability feel safe and enjoy equality before the law. Personal and community support, meaning people with disability have access to a range of supports to assist them to live independently and engage in their communities. Education and learning, meaning that people with disability achieve their full potential through education and learning. Health and wellbeing, meaning people with disability attain the highest possible health and wellbeing outcomes throughout their lives. And community attitudes support equality, inclusion, and participation in society for people with disability. Now, you may select more than one outcome measure as part of your application, but please only select the outcome areas your project will most closely contribute to achieving. Selecting all outcome areas is unlikely to make your application more competitive and is actually more likely to make your application less competitive. So examples of projects we funded last year through the 2023 grant round include a project looking at smart technology for physical activity, using smart technology devices to increase student participation in physical activity, reduce sedentary behaviour and increase the intensity of exercises to meet WHO guidelines of moderate to vigorous intensity. Chinese community singing group to improve the quality of life and overall inclusion of TAC clients and Victorians with disability from a Chinese background through the power of music and community. In-access maps to encourage people with disability and TAC clients to actively engage with their surroundings and increase their community participation by improving accessibility, accuracy, and user-friendliness of the in-access maps platform. Circles of support for acquired brain injury to create a freely available, accessible, easy language benchmarked and customized practice guide for people with acquired brain injury, their families and supporters to implement the Circles of Support model. And an acquired brain injury advice line for advocacy to meet a critical unmet need in Victoria for advocacy support for people with acquired brain injury, including TAC clients. Now, we have also pulled together some feedback from last year's grant program to help you develop your project ideas. So here we've got the successful project ideas and what they were more likely to have done in their application. So they were more likely to have identified a gap in service delivery within the wider disability ecosystem, focused on a strategic area or high priority target cohort for the TAC, presented an innovative solution to an ongoing problem, produced benefits that would outlast the project duration and be scalable, and added to the evidence base within the disability sector. On the flip side, unsuccessful project ideas were more likely to request funding for what is or should be business as usual for the organisation, form part of a bigger project where it wasn't clear how the TAC contribution would fit into the overall plan, demonstrated limited understanding of the disability sector, attempted to do too much within the confines of the grant program, such as the timelines, so you only have 15 months to complete your project, and the funding. And they also were less likely to have taken up opportunities provided by the TAC to support application development, such as attending the information session or undertaking a pre-application support meeting. We do have rules around what you can use your grant funding for. You can apply for funding for key personnel, but this must match the roles and responsibilities of the position and reflect the time commitment of the project. Salary contributions can be requested for supporting project roles, consumer experts and consultants. For example, you might need a website developer, you might need a consumer advocate, a training specialist. We do encourage you to buy in expertise that you don't have as well, such as maybe you need some evaluation support. You can ask for funding to fund equipment, but the equipment must be essential to the project. So, for example, you might have some language translation and specialized information software or devices, but the total equipment cost must not exceed $10,000. And you can apply for funds for other direct project costs, such as transcription services, consumer focus groups, and training workshops. Just remember to justify everything that you ask for in your budget and make sure it's really clear how it connects to your project. We do have expenses that we cannot fund within this project. So these include infrastructure and capital works, fees for conferences, professional memberships, training or development courses, and indirect project costs. So costs incurred by your organisation that cannot be directly and easily attributed to this specific project. Applications need to be submitted via Smarty Grants before 5 p.m. on Friday the 26th of July. If you run into any problems along the way, please do reach out and let us know. We will not be able to accept any applications after that closing time. Once the round has closed, your application will progress through an eligibility screening process. Now, while our form is designed to prevent submission of ineligible applications, applications will still need to be screened to make sure they meet those eligibility requirements listed in the program guidelines. Please note we may also deem your application ineligible where we are unable to verify eligibility requirements. So, for example, if your organisation is located and operating in Victoria and we can't find information that corroborates that, you may be deemed ineligible for the grant round. So only eligible applications will be assessed by a panel of subject matter experts against the assessment criteria, and a recommendation report will be compiled. Recommended applicants may be required to go through a negotiation process, and we anticipate that funding agreements will be signed by November 2024. The TAC is unable to fund project milestones that occur prior to a funding agreement being signed, so please keep this in mind when planning your application. Successful applicants must complete their projects by February 2026. So each eligible application will be assessed against each of these criteria. So the biggest weighting is put on the impact on client outcomes at 40%. So we're really looking for projects that work with clients and people with disability to design and deliver projects that will benefit them. Assessors will be looking at the extent the project has been informed and will be led by users, and whether the project will increase inclusivity for people with disability. Applications that are unable to connect project outcomes with benefits for TAC clients will be considered less competitive. We'll also look at your organisational capability and capacity. It's 25% of the assessment in that. So to ensure quality project delivery and reduce the risk to clients, assessors will look at the degree to which the applicant is able to demonstrate that they have the right personnel to undertake the assigned role in delivering the project. Project methodology is 25% of the assessment. So the TAC needs to demonstrate value for money and to ensure that projects funded through the Small Grant Program will deliver appropriate outcomes for people with disability and the wider community. When responding to this criterion, consider the overall story you are telling in your application. Specifically, will the project you've proposed address the needs you have identified, and will it lead to the outcomes you have selected? Assessors will also consider if the project has identified appropriate deliverables within realistic timelines. And the last criterion we'll look at is value for money and risk at 10% of the assessment. Assessors will be looking for clear links between funding requested, the justification for the expense, and the proposed project. Be sure to list any co-contributions or in-kind support if you are receiving them, as assessors may determine your budget is unrealistic if you are attempting to do too much for the funding requested. A sound risk management plan demonstrates to us that you have really considered your project and any barriers you might come up against in completing it. We recommend you focus on the major risks or challenges that will prevent you from completing the project, such as participant recruitment, rather than listing every little challenge you may come up against. Be sure to include what strategies you will use to reduce the impact of risks and challenges on your project. We've compiled some helpful tips for you when you are writing your applications. We strongly recommend you watch the information session, which you are obviously doing right now. We do have pre-application support meetings available, and we do have documentation there for you to read. So the program guidelines and the application questions, please do ensure that you read these, as they will really help you to put your application together. Use evidence to support your project rationale. So you can use anything on the TAC website, including the TAC annual report. If you've got operational data, such as surveys and anecdotal feedback from your organisation to demonstrate the need for the project, please ensure you include that. And you may also use websites such as the Australian Bureau of Statistics or the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. Connect the pieces of your application. So a good application will connect the need to the proposed solution and the expected outcomes of the project. Don't forget to proofread your application. If you use plain language and avoid unnecessary jargon, and make sure you don't make any assumptions about what the assessor will know about your organisation. Ask another person unfamiliar with your proposal to read your application just to check that the flow is there. And don't forget to check your spelling, grammar and flow yourself. And then the last point we've got there is just don't leave it to the last minute to submit your application. The system we use will prevent you from submitting your application if any of your responses breach the rules. For example, if you haven't answered a question you are required to or are over a word limit, you'll get a red arrow and it'll tell you need to go back and fix it. The system will shut off at 5 p.m. sharp on Friday, the 26th of July. And even if you are midway doing something, you will be unable to submit your application. We recommend you give yourself enough time to troubleshoot any issues with the system, as we are unable to accept late applications. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have. We're available via research@tac.vic.gov.au. I do strongly encourage you book a pre-application support meeting with us. Places are limited and sessions are not available during the final week of the grant round. So get in early to make sure you get a chance to take us up on that opportunity. To make the most of your pre-application support meeting, please come prepared. So make sure you have read the grant guidelines and have a project idea in mind. If you would like to check your eligibility, you can do this via email prior to booking a pre-application support meeting. We can also respond to any questions by email up to close of business Friday the 19th of July, and after this time we will only respond to questions relating to using or submitting the application form. We wish all applicants the best of luck and look forward to reading about your projects.